Sean, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You asked before the podcast if we'd ever met before, and it was 22 years ago. You'd probably were just starting out with Fat Cats in Costa Vida because it was at your Fat Cats location. And I was doing a TV show, and you probably don't even remember this, but we'd go around and film dates and then make them funny. And our very first episode was at Costa Vida in Fat Cats because you gave me like $200 to film there, and it was way more than I deserved at the time. But I've always appreciated that.
That is so cool. Well, yeah, I don't remember that, but I'm glad it was a great experience.
Yeah.
And now look what you've done from there.
Well, it's funny. Every time I've had the chance to go between Costa Vida and like Cafe Rio or any of the other ones, I've always gone to Costa Vida because of that.
Oh, I'm glad. I love to have fans that are well known.
Well, it's just, and it kind of speaks to who you are. I remember when I went to the owner of Cafe Rio at that time too to film their location, he literally just said, "Why would I do that?" And he was just couldn't have been more rude to me about it, only because he just didn't care to. And I was like, that's fair. But you just got back from, well, not just got back, but serving a mission as a mission president, and you can just tell that you're the kind of person. I've had so many people tell me about you. You've been on my short list of people I've really wanted to have on here because just what you've done, what you've been able to do, but just the way people speak about you, and I can just tell what kind of leader and person you are.
Oh, very kind.
Yeah, I want to. Well, maybe we start with that. How long ago did you get back from your LDS mission?
Got back in 2020. July of 2020.
Oh wow! So you guys got to go through the end of the pandemic.
We did. We had the first several months of the pandemic.
So I mean, I've always wanted to kind of talk to a mission president about that experience. I can't think of many things more rewarding. I get to coach men right now, so I have 150 guys I coach. In my leadership program, I got about another 150 in my tribe. So kind of a similar situation as far as that goes. And a lot of times people joke around that I'm a bishop because I get the call when big things happen, right? And they what's cool about my community is they kind of take care of each other. I have big leaders in there, people like, Michael McHenry that set us up on this podcast. And shout out to Mike. But they kind of help each other. But when the big call comes in, I get to work on that. And I can only imagine your job of guiding 200 young men and in that time frame of their lives. That's when they're the most impressionable, and your influence on them is truly going to change the lives of tens of thousands of people afterwards.
It's there's a personal motto or belief that I have that we all have an opportunity to have a positive impact on all we come in contact with. As a matter of fact, in our company, we've adopted that as part of our purpose, to steward positive impact on all that we come in contact with. And for you to share that as you started off 22 years ago and all this time for you today to be spending your time to create this community of 150 rising stars, leaders, and for you to give of your time and your experience to share with them, to help guide them. I respect that. And my experience, I certainly have enjoyed doing that professionally, to be given the opportunity to go down with probably over the 3 years, it was just over 600 18, 19, 20-year-old young people that are future moms and dads and leaders in their communities. It was one of the most cherished experiences I've ever had. Certainly one of the most difficult to be in that environment for 3 years. Every day from well before sun up to well after sundown. You're just you're involved with again these young people that truly are wanting to make a difference in the world, and they're finding their way, and to have the opportunity to have a positive impact in their lives was a true blessing.
Yeah, I know that for me, I had two mission presidents in the time I served. They switched out while I was there, and they were two of very short list of mentors in my life of people that really changed my entire life. My first guy was really military, and I remember my second day going in, and he asked me how I was doing, and I was like, well, not very good, and I was just trying to be honest, and he basically yelled at me and go to work. But that was the day I learned to be a worker. I was like, okay, I got one choice. I'm going to go to work, and I couldn't do my mission better than I did it. I worked so hard. And then the second guy, I remember the very first time I met him, it was about 2 weeks before my birthday, and I got 8 months left in my mission or so, and he comes up to me at an event and he just goes, Elder Rex, he's like, happy birthday in 2 weeks, And I'm like, how? He's got 200 missionaries. This dude, I just felt so seen by him. And he was such a genius at helping each and every one of us, felt like we were his favorite. And so I've called upon the lessons I learned just watching them and observing them so many times. It really is such a big role for a member of the church when they go on a mission at that young age.
I had the exact same experience in my mission when I was 19. I went to Concepcion, Chile, and I had a literal captain in the Navy, and I had another mission president that was an attorney, but was just a gentle giant. And I, from them both, I learned. I have a maxim: high love, high expectations, and I learned the high love from that attorney mission president and the high expectation from my captain mission president. And I've learned the balance of those, to have high expectations and to bring high love and the impact that can have. As I served down in Phoenix, that was something I was always working toward, to have that balance of bring the expectations, certainly, but make sure they know that they're recognized, that they're loved, that they have value and are being prepared for a work far greater than they even understood during that 18-month or 2-year period. They're being shaped for something far greater than they can begin to understand at this point in their life.
Yeah, well, and it's, it feels like the youth today, it's a little bit hard for them to manage a little bit what to do when they graduate high school, more so than I feel like than when I was that age, because for us, it was just kind of laid out. You're going to go on a mission and you're going to go to college or whatever else. And nowadays, I feel like there's a lot of people aren't sure exactly the same path, or I guess they still have about the same number of missionaries going out or whatever. But why is it so pivotal at that age for somebody to take the church side out of it, but the structure and the work and just the sacrifice that you have as a missionary? Why is it so pivotal for a young person to go through that experience?
Well, and you can think in your own life, we grow up as young people, just it's all about our world, the whole WIIFM, what's in it for me, and we're so focused on our needs, our wants, and we demand what we want to see, what we want to experience, and as a young person, to be able to learn how to transition and take their eyes off themselves, to find the greatest joy and the greatest impact you can have is to turn outward. We learned that from Christ. He was all about turning outward and serving and finding opportunities to lift, to inspire, to encourage, and as you do that, the success you have in doing that helps you realize what you want most. It fulfills inside you your needs and wants, and you just find that the more you can serve, help lift other people, the more that your needs will just by default happen. And to get that figured out in your youth, to be able to take that into a marriage and to take that into a career, it's powerful. If you don't figure that out until after you're married or later into your career, it's rocky, it's clunky. And so to have that opportunity with these young people to help them get that balance and learn basic, it was remarkable to me to have these 600 young people arriving into the mission field using that experience. But I can even liken it to my professional life. I see these young people that are coming in and working in our restaurants or our entertainment properties. These young people, it's a different world today with social media and the lack of opportunity to work and to have responsibility. And so our focus with our missionaries and even today in the corporate world is really to help these young people learn how to work, learn how to find joy in working and paying the price and choosing to do things the hard way. We're wired in such a way, unfortunately, to always look for the easy path. And it's when you do things the hard way, you learn some of life's greatest lessons. And again, you can have your greatest impact and I think find your greatest joy.
No, I agree. There's just something powerful in when you can get outside of yourself. I think for me, that was the best gift. My parents separated right before I left. And the gift of my life is I didn't have to deal with any of it. Yeah. I was just out there working and pouring into other people and it let it work itself out. And it really was, it's one of the happiest times of my life even to this day, because you really are there's a principle of life when you pour into other people. It's a really good way to just feel good at the end of the day. You go to bed, you feel good about the day, about yourself, about what you've been doing.
Well, and it's a divine principle. It's you love God, you love your neighbor, and loving your neighbor is to serve your neighbor. It's to turn outward, and it's to find those opportunities to to be able to touch people's lives in a good way.
Yeah, you talk about work ethic. It was interesting. We were hanging out with the other night, the national championship football game, and we ordered a pizza. Like we ordered like 4 pizzas, and we're hanging out. And about an hour goes by, and we're kind of, man, where's the pizzas? I go crack the front door in case he comes and I won't hear him. And another hour goes by, and we're in the game. We got some snacks, but we're all getting hungry. So I'm like, man, I'm gonna call Papa John's and see where this pizza's at. I finally call this kid answers, and I said, hey, just checking on my order where it's at. And we purposely ordered because we were playing poker, just hanging out. And he's like, oh yeah, your order's right here, Jimmy Rex. And I was like, okay. And it was over 2 hours. And he goes, oh yeah, our driver didn't come in today. So you guys think you can come pick it up? And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But I started thinking, we got into this conversation about like, who is running that place? Like the work ethic, the communication. Like there's got to be a system where you can at least send a text out like, hey, your food's, I'm sorry, our driver didn't come in. Do you still want your pizza? You can come get it, but we can't deliver it. I mean, nothing. 2 hours later. Uh-huh. And I just started thinking, I'm like, man, is that like the workforce? Like that a lot of companies, unfortunately, they don't teach how to work hard or the right principles. And that's the result of it. I just was like, geez, the poor guy that owns this Papa John's probably has no idea how it's being managed. But it was a really, I was like, no, we don't want him now. Like we can't come get him, it was interesting.
Well, and one thing we talk about, and again, this is in our restaurants and our entertainment properties, we focus on that guest experience. I mean, certainly it's a cost of entry. If you're in the food business, you better have great food. If you're in the entertainment business, you better have great entertainment, and your equipment needs to work, and you need to provide the best experience you can as it relates to that. But the interaction, that one-on-one, that caring for the guest, that's the one that I think you see today. There's a whole movement of to succeed going forward. If you don't have a major focus on guest experience, and you don't dial in and create a remarkable guest experience, your days are numbered. Yeah. You're not too excited to order Papa John's again.
I will never order again
if you have
Papa
an experience
John's
like that. And even if it was a rough experience and they called you and they explained their circumstance,
all good.
You'd have been fine.
I'm a business owner. I get it.
You'd have been fine.
Yeah. It just was interesting. It's just, I know managing 219 and 20-year-olds, I mean, I can't imagine the stress of that, the what you dealt with on a daily basis. And then you throw COVID on top of that. How did you manage that as a mission president during that time when you're dealing with this crazy shutdown? Your whole job is to be out in the world talking to people, and all of a sudden COVID hits. Like, how did you manage through that situation?
We were fortunate in that when we arrived, the very first thing my wife and I did is we went and sat down. We had 21 stakes in our mission. 167 wards.
Wow. That was in Phoenix.
It was in Phoenix. And so we went and sat down with all of our stake presidents, eventually all of our bishops. But with those stake presidents, out of the gate, we let them know that as we are here, we are going to develop and work with these missionaries to be all you need them to be. These are your stakes and your wards. You have the responsibility, the stewardship for the work that's to be done, the service that's to be provided. And we're going to do all in our power to make sure you have the very, very best resource with these missionaries. And so out of the gate, where we empowered them to know that we recognize this is your stake, your wards, your area, your community, and we're here to be a resource to you. That responsibility, them understanding that, changed everything for us when COVID came, and it changed the entire mission. Frankly, they understood their responsibility, and they understood that we were working hard to make sure that we were the best resource we could be, and we're showing up like, hey, where do you need us? And we weren't showing up with our own agenda. We weren't showing up trying to do what we thought needed to be done. We were plugging into their goals and their strategies. So when COVID came along, immediately we could reach out to those leaders. We had a high level of trust and respect between them and the missionaries and us. And so when it came and we had the struggles that we had, we rallied together, we strategized together, we executed together. And so it wasn't, we got, they always look to the mission president and the mission president's wife. Wow, you guys are doing all this wonderful work, and I'm not saying it just to try to deflect it or to be humble. Genuinely, it was a it was a group effort, and our leaders, those stake presidents and those bishops and ward mission leaders, members of those wards, they stepped up, they rallied, and in our mission, we didn't. When I was there, we didn't get a single case of COVID, and our mission, we were able to continue. We had to change it up some. We couldn't go into people's homes and teach. We couldn't be involved in groups to provide service, but we did. Get together and plan, and basically we followed the schedule. Instead of, there was a lot of lockdowns with missionaries in their apartments. Ours, we followed a schedule. You got up, you worked out, you ate, you planned, you left, you went to the park and sat in the park on a swing set and pulled up your digital devices and did meetings digitally. You went to the church building and did it in a room there, came back to your apartment, had lunch. And so we stayed involved. And so our work did not slow down. As a matter of fact, it went up. We found that our success was, because what happened was everybody was home. All the members were home.
That's a good point.
Everybody was home. It was, and so we weren't getting no shows, and so we had tremendous success. Again, I'll credit the support we got from the leadership in the area.
The best leaders, they empower the other leaders. They don't say, I'm great. They say, look how great you are. Yeah. And I think that speaks to that. Well, I want to get back into the story of how you got started with Costa Vida. Okay. I know when you had launched Fat Cats, and you were the founder of Fat Cats, the bowling alleys. And then Costa Vida was connected to it, essentially, right? Was that from the beginning, or was that afterwards? Maybe take us to the beginning. Like, how did you get into, you guys are how many stores now, by the way?
We'll break 100 locations, 106 locations in Costa Vida this year.
Wow.
And we have 8 Fat Cats, building our 9th. Let me first say that Dave Rudder is my business partner from the beginning, and so with our Fat Cats brand, I'll do a quick part of the story. I owned a company that we actually built and modernized entertainment properties in the Intermountain West. Dave Rudder, you might remember Prestwich Farms Restaurant, which was down there in Orem, and he was the proprietor of that restaurant. He had retired young. He was in his early 30s, and was, when I say retired, sold the restaurant, was kind of a good place in life, trying to decide what he was going to do next. And so he reached out to me and said, "Hey, you've got all these connections in the entertainment space. What if we build a bowling alley, a bowling center, a family entertainment center?" And I told him I really wasn't interested in doing that. I built it for other people, but I wasn't interested in running one. But at that time, I was in Colorado building a property called Fat City, and it was a high end. If you've ever been to a Dave and Buster's or a Jillian's, it was an upper scale facility. And I took him to Colorado, him and his wife, Dave and Kim. We went over and they saw what we were doing there, and I said, now that I'd be willing to invest in. And so we talked about bringing a great dining experience to the entertainment space, and so you could be under one roof. And that evolved after a decade. Didn't know if we'd build another one. That evolved where we got into luxury movie theaters, where that became part of the concept. So we built, 4 of the family entertainment centers, and then we introduced the movie theaters. And then after we introduced the movie theaters, today we've gotten out of all the family entertainment. All of our projects today are luxury movie theaters with bowling and the
well, and before you guys came along with Fat Cats, there really wasn't that experience. The machines were always broken, the balls didn't fit, they were all messed up, and it was just, you're really terrible fries for the food or hot dogs and stuff. It wasn't a great experience to go bowling. And when you guys came along with Fat Cats, it really did, at least locally in Utah, it was the first time there's a good bowling alley that's going to have a positive experience. And
it went back to what we were talking about a moment ago, the guest experience. We were just focused, our mission with Fat Cats is we delight and connect people, one film, one game, one experience at a time. It's delighting and connecting. And so that's been our mantra, and that's what we have really focused on. And so to connect Costa to that, after we had built, I think we were building our 3rd Fat Cats, and we had pizza factories inside our Fat Cats.
I remember that. Yeah.
And at that time, the pizza factory that was in our Provo property, there was a full service pizza factory right up the road. And so that one in proximity was too close. And so the pizza factory wasn't the right fit. So we were looking to put a different concept in there. And at the time, Kenny Prestwich, who's the founder for Costa Vida, he was our manager, our general manager of our Fat Cats in Salt Lake City. and he approached Dave and I to if we'd financially back him to start it was Costa Azul at the time.
Yeah, it was Costa Azul. I remember that. Yeah.
And we declined. We told him our plate's full. We're busy, and so he went and got another financial backer, and they started the very first Costa in Layton, Utah, Costa Azul, and it was a phenomenal success. And Dave and I are kicking ourselves, thinking, "Doggone it, we should have backed him." Yeah. But we had this need in Provo where we were pulling this pizza factory out, so we approached them and said, "Hey, we'd like to be your first franchisee," and they sat down with us, and we put together what we needed to become a franchisee, and we closed the pizza factory, and we opened a Costa Vida.
I lived around the corner when that all happened.
Okay.
So I was living behind the subway that was right there on Bulldog.
And you mentioned Mike McHenry a moment ago. He was part of this whole story at that time. Yeah, he was running the Fat Cats. And so when we pulled the pizza factory and introduced Costa Vida, he's like, "Great, I got to learn Costa Vida." And he was the leader down there. And so he, with his team, was super instrumental in getting all that going. But anyway, as we built that property, we then saw how successful it was. We thought, well, maybe we ought to, part of our portfolio, Dave and I, let's build some freestanding franchise locations. So we built 1600 North, and we went to the first location up in Idaho and Meridian. Kenny and his partner JD got into a lawsuit with Cafe Rio, and they settled that after a couple years. And during that time, we just kept building.
So that lawsuit didn't affect you guys as franchisees?
No, we just kept building franchise locations, and they did what they needed to do to settle that out and take care of it, and they did. And when they were done, I think we had 11 locations, and there was like 23 in the entire brand. We owned 11 of them. And so we approached JD and Kenny at that point when they settled everything out with Rio and said, "Hey, we're providing most of the support to your other franchise partners anyway. We'd like to take the lead on this." So we brought controlling interest at that point of Costa. Those original investors, those original Costa Azul and Costa Vida owners, they still own 30 some odd %. We bought controlling interest and went to work. And we went from that 23 to, again, we'll break 100 this year. And it's just had our most profitable year we've ever had this last year.
I eat it at least once a week. I get the burrito bowl, because it's just really healthy, and I get double meat, and it fits my budget, and it's just a perfect meal. It's like I had the 600 North. It's right by our studio that we're in right now. And you know when I eat the one a lot is on your way down in Fillmore.
Okay,
every time I pass by, because it's the only healthy option driving south for like literally like 3 hours.
And now we just opened another one in Nephi.
Oh, really? Yeah, okay. They're good to know. Yeah, I can stop in Nephi now too. But no, it's a phenomenal restaurant. And I really got to commend you on just the quality of the food. It's just really good. It just tastes great. Every time you go, it's a kind of a luxury food experience. You're like, oh man, I'm eating a really good meal today.
That's been a focus of ours. You'll see a lot of restaurants that are iconic, and as they scale and they grow, they either get sold or they new owners come in or new philosophies, and they move away from what it was that made them great. That's one of the messages that we are always talking about. Is we do things the hard way. The way we did it in the beginning is the exact way we do it today. And when you go into Costa, like you, all of us that are Costa fans, it's what we love about it. It's always the same.
When you can tell the difference when places do. I remember, I've had on the founder, the original franchise founder of Teriyaki Sticks, and he sold it to a big conglomerate company, and the food went to garbage. I mean, it was uneatable. And I used to eat there once a week, and then all of a sudden it was like, this is the worst part of the chicken. You're like, don't even know what you're eating. And it immediately went under because they forgot to keep the focus on really great food. You can tell the companies that get that versus those that don't.
Yeah, and that's the, those of us that are just loyal fans. That's the heartbreak when you see a great brand or restaurant that gets sold and sometimes sold multiple times, and they just lose their soul. They lose what made them great.
So how do you grow like that? That's so impressive to me. Like, I think that's the part that I just see, and I'm just mesmerized by that kind of growth, to be able to keep the culture, to be able to keep the quality and everything that you do. And I mean, you leave and go on a mission for 3 years. I'm guessing your partner took it over during that time and managed it or whatever, ran it. How do you maybe talk about that process of scaling and kind of what you did that was unique to help you keep the quality and just the brand the way it was?
I mentioned a moment ago our purpose statement, stewarding positive impact, being faithful stewards of God's children by helping them have a positive impact on all they come in contact with. That purpose statement, along with our mission on the Costa side, we serve amazing, one meal, one guest, one experience at a time. And then I mentioned our purpose statement with Fat Cats. We delight and connect, one film, one game, one experience at a time. And then we have our values. We are relentless with that purpose, that mission, those missions, and those values. We just make sure the teams, these young people, as we mentioned a moment ago, that come on board that really don't know, they just have never had a job, they don't know how to work. We let them understand that those are the filters that we do all that we do. And so there's so much that we can do as the owners of the company or the senior leadership of the company. But at the end of the day, it's those team members that deliver that guest experience. And so if we don't get the water to the end of the row, if we don't get our team understanding and embracing, owning those values, that mission, our purpose, if that doesn't happen, then we spend all of our time just constantly rebuilding what we lose. When that gets to the end of the row, and it's a constant effort, even as it's working, we have so many different KPIs, metrics that we track, and guest with a problem, or there's different platforms where we gather the guest sentiment, and we can see quickly if we're slipping. And when we start to see we're slipping, we're checking, how with turnover, because in the restaurant space, entertainment space, you have turnover. We're realizing that, okay, our training's not getting to the end of the row, so we're doubling down on that all the time. And today, I mentioned 100 units. When I look at these brands that are 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 units, and these are respectable brands. I think it's the same thing. You look at Chick-fil-A, you look at In-N-Out Burger, you look at some of those brands. Their purpose, mission, and values, they're embraced not just by the leadership, but by each team member. And when that happens, that's where you can scale. That's where, when those team members really believe and buy in and are committed to what you profess as your purpose, mission, and values, that's when you can stand the test of time.
Is that robust training then? Is that making sure the managers really emphasize that more than anything else? Or because so many companies don't have that, or they don't even talk about my Papa John's experience the other day, right? Like clearly they...
It's all the above. And when you mention your Papa John's experience, do know that in Costa and Fat Cats, we've had some ugly experiences like that. Just in business, there's times where, it's the very end of the night and they're wanting to close down the restaurant. A guest comes in at 9 o'clock at night, and for that guest, that's their first experience. And for that team member, they're ready to go home. And so we're constantly where we gather that sentiment when there's those times we get wrong, like you referenced that Papa John, we're on the phone and we're making it right. And our team sees that. And it's so much easier to get it right the first time than have to go back and make it right after. But they know we will. Our team does. So that I think becomes a motivator to get it right the first time, so we don't have to do it twice. But I would say it is. I wish I could say that we have it all figured out. We're perfect at it. We're not. Yeah. But what I can say is we understand how important it is, and we spend the resources necessary to keep getting it right. But the reason we're at 100 units today just is because we weren't ready. If we just get out there, you know how good our food is. Mm-hmm. We can get out there and go open another 100, 200, 300, 500 restaurants tomorrow. But if we don't have this part right, it'll ruin the brand. And so we have been disciplined to scale our growth, to throttle our growth based on how can we ensure that we can deliver the experience. Now, we're committed to grow to 200, 300, 500 and more units, but we will do that based on our ability to deliver, and we measure that. And that's a huge part of our growth strategy is how are we doing with that guest experience, and that comes to how are we doing in developing and training our leadership. And we know how well we're doing by what those results are.
Well, with my coaching program, we do these weekend retreats, and we do them every 3 months with our leadership group. And little things do matter a lot to me, right? It's like making sure the pancakes come out hot when there's 50 guys, and it's like you can't cook them all and then put them out and just you're getting cold pancakes. That's a problem, And it's like when you take stuff out of the bins that need to be there, like the speakers and equipment, getting the bins out of the way so that the place looks nice. They seem like such little things, but I'm obsessed as well with the guest experience. My favorite compliment is, because I was a part of so many of these masterminds or events, and what happens is you go to the first one and it's incredible, and then they get progressively a little worse every time. And I just said, that is not going to be this experience. Like, I want that the last experience, everybody goes, wow, that was just as good as the first one, and just blow them away with that full experience and overdo it. Like, it's, I'll get upset at my team if we run out of food. They know they're in deep trouble. Like, overdo it. We got 50 guys coming, we cook for 65, because I don't ever want to have somebody not have that great experience. And I've had where it's happened, and we have to have tough conversations, because it's like, hey, I know this seems like a small thing, but we want them to be blown away by the experience. That's what makes us different than everybody else out there.
Well, the fact that you focus on that is exactly why you are where you are today. I mean, that is the piece. I think so many times people get so caught up in growth and success, they forget to hold on to that commitment to excellence. I love that quote from Vince Lombardi. He was coaching the Green Bay Packers, and he had just taken over the team. And I think they had won the previous season either no games, they won one game. And as he showed up, Starr was their quarterback, and he pulled the whole team together, and he told them, he told them a number of things, but the one standout message was, we are going to pursue perfection, knowing full well we'll never achieve it, but along the way, we're going to encounter excellence, and got them understanding what excellence is all about, which is what you just described. The fact that that's in your bones, that we will not provide a subpar product. Yep. And your team knows that. And because they know that, and that's important to you, they're going to deliver on that. And you'll find that as you continue to scale, the moment that message gets lost, that's where you're going to be spending time again, and that's where we're at. That's where I, with Dave and I, today, someone asked us just recently, the things you focus on in your business, we go to where that might not be working.
Yeah.
We've got so many great people that are building and making this company great. We spend our time solving those kinds of issues when we find them.
That's beautiful. One thing that's genius about your product, the restaurants that you built, I feel like there was fast food where you kind of got this cheap food, and then there was restaurants, but you can only turn over the table so many times in a night. Yeah. And what you guys did is you came in, you said, here's this concept where you get restaurant style dinner, but you're moving them in at a fast food pace. Yeah. I mean, before you guys really did this, I don't think that was a concept. I think it's never been lost on me, the genius of that.
Yeah, that fast casual you're seeing today with your fast food and your sit down dining, that fast casual space where you get a good part of your business either through the convenience of picking it up at a drive-through window, through the convenience of picking it up inside to go, or you eat it in the dining room or on the patio. The fact you can come through that line and within 5 to 10 minutes you've got the food and you're eating, and you can be on your way. I mean, we know that we're a busy. Things aren't slowing down for us; they're getting busier, and so fast casual really meets a niche that fast food doesn't, and sitting down in a dining room doesn't. So I think that our space is a unique space, and thank goodness it's a space that I think will be in demand for a long time.
Yeah, how have you been able to keep your focus on your thing? Because so many people probably want your time and attention. They want to show you their product, or they want you to invest in their thing. And you do have to be pretty laser focused on what you're doing, or else you take your eye off it for even a second, and you've got a lot of competition, everything else, just things can fall apart. How do you decide where you put your time and attention? Like when you get called to be a mission president, right? I'm sure your first thought was, oh boy, there's going to be a lot of extra work. But how do you decide what you say yes to versus what you say no to? Because, you can do anything, I'm sure, but you can't do everything.
Right.
And that creates this whole different dynamic for a person like yourself.
It's a great question. With Steve Jobs, you talk about how important it is to say no to things. When he talked about denting the universe, and he was asked, what would you consider to be your greatest accomplishment? And I'm paraphrasing, but ultimately he came back and said, what I would say I became really good at, a greatest accomplishment, was the things I said no to, not the things I said yes to, and there's a profound truth there. When I mention our purpose, mission, and values, and I'm going to go back to our purpose, being faithful stewards of God's children by helping them have a positive impact on everyone they come in contact with. For me, it's a simple filter. When things come along, when this comes along, is this going to get in the way of what I'm doing to deliver that positive impact? Is this going to enhance that? Or is it going to detract from it? And as I ask myself those questions, I can see pretty quick that this is going to get in the way. And serving a mission, certainly that was going to detract from my time that I could spend in the business. But I knew that I was going to become a better human from having that experience. I knew that in serving my God, that I certainly and fulfilling that opportunity, responsibility, stewardship, that blessings would come. And I also know that in our company, as I wasn't there, it gave an opportunity for so many of our leaders to step up. And when I was there was really not a need to step up in this area or this area. But when I'm not there, there was now a need to step up in this area and that area. And so they became better leaders and contributors. And so in coming back, I mean, it was interesting. I did not want to come back and step back into what they've now been able to step up and do so well. So I had to find a new platform. And that was a great life learning for me too, that, hey, as I can develop these amazing leaders in my wake and get out of their way, then I'll find the opportunities to really focus and make a difference in a different way. And so that, in answering your question, I would just simply say running opportunities, demands on my time through that filter. Is it gonna add to our purpose? Is it gonna take away from our purpose? And with that, I can pretty quickly discern that one needs to be a no. And I've gotten really happy and excited to say no. I mean, I've realized as much as I've got going on that Steve Jobs was spot on with that the better I can say no to the things that, and not that they're not a great opportunity, they would just get in the way of my greatest impact.
That's one of the things I tell people, in your 20s and part of your 30s, most things should be a yes, because you're looking for opportunity. You never know what door is going to open the next one.
Great point.
But then you get to a place where it's like, okay, now every time I say yes to something, what am I actually saying no to? And you have to get clear on that.
That's right.
Right? And it might just be taking care of yourself. It might be taking care of your family or spending time with people you want to be, whatever that is. It's a lesson that I got way later than I wish I had. I said yes to way too many things, and I had to keep getting burned before I finally went, oh, I actually want a simpler life. Yeah. Like when I focus on my thing, it's really easy. I invested in 35 companies and all these different things and restaurants, and you have to worry about all these different things. And you get dragged into their drama. You get dragged into their stuff that's going on, and next thing you know, you're like, man, I just want to simplify everything that I'm doing. I see why as people get older, they tend to do that, because you learn that lesson, unfortunately, the hard way.
Yeah, I sat down with a business leader up in Canada once, and we were just talking. He did some phenomenal things in his career. And one of the things, he shared the acronym, you've heard it, HABU, H-A-B-U, highest and best use of your time. And he shared, as he built his enterprise, that was his filter. Is this the highest and best use of my time? And it's not what's going to make more money, like you just described. The highest and best use of his time, there were times it was with his wife. There was times with his kids or in his faith, and certainly times in his business. But always just running it through that filter is, of all the things that I can be spending my time on, is this the highest and best use of my time? And for me, going through that filter, I don't watch a lot of TV. That's not the highest and best use of my time.
The thing that fell off on my life was sports. Yeah, I used to watch so much, and I can't.
Same thing.
I'll watch really important games, but I'll make sure I'm watching them with friends, or I'm watching them while I'm at the gym.
Which is the highest. Yeah, yes. Now you're making those connections. That's exactly right.
Yeah. I want to get into this a little bit, managing the youth of today. You have such a unique perspective on this, because I'm guessing you have thousands of employees that you oversee. A lot of them, it's an entry-level job for a lot of them, but then also with the missionaries. How do you help a young man that maybe is losing his way a little bit, or he's lost? So I'd love to hear perspective, both as the mission president, but also as the CEO of this giant company. How do you help them? Like, what I think a lot of people today don't know how to manage the youth, and they don't understand them. I think you have a unique perspective, because you had so much time with them that you probably really understand this younger generation better than most.
I think for them and for me, as I interact with them, what's the title of Simon Sinek's book, The Why?
Start with Why.
Start with Why. For so many of us, we just get in that cycle: home to work, work to home, home to work, work to home, or home to school, school to home, school to home, or sports or whatever. You just get caught up in motion. But to know your why, and as a leader, to know the why of those that you lead. And so to help these young people, to help them in their youth, to say, today, what is your why? What is your purpose for doing what you do? Because so many of them, hey, I just do what mom and dad want me to do, or I just keep myself out of trouble over there. But for them to start to understand, I need to define my why. I didn't know why I'm going to school and I'm wanting to get good grades. What impact's that going to have on the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years and the rest of my life? And so as they can get that why, instead of mom and dad just saying, hey, do your homework, work on your grades, as they know their why, now their commitment to that changes dramatically, which is going to impact their results. So for me, and that's schoolwork. I mean, it's the same with missionary work. It's the same with you're a professional. If you're working in a restaurant, you're in this restaurant. What is your why? A lot of them, I'm here getting a paycheck. Okay, so the paycheck is certainly. You wouldn't do what you're doing if you're not going to get the paycheck, but let's translate that. What does that paycheck mean to you? What are you going to do with that paycheck? And you get them understanding, and do you want a bigger paycheck? And how can you get that bigger paycheck? And so it's just that listening and connecting with them and helping them define in the season that they're in what their why is. And then as a leader, continuing to adjust that and stretch them. That it may be a why that looks like this today, but 6 months later it's a different why. And so you've got to stay connected. We always talk to our leaders about sitting down and having those one-on-ones with their team and understanding where they're at. What are they dealing with? I mean, it's remarkable today in today's world how many of our young people are dealing with either their own mental health or parents that are dealing with mental health, social media, the impact that's had on people's lives today. I mean, there's crazy things going on in the lives of these young people, and just to sit down and get them more grounded. Hey, let's set all that aside for a moment. And for you, what is your why? What gets you excited? And then celebrate that and help them strategize to achieve that. And if they do that, then get them understanding that, okay, now what's the next step? Get them forward thinking of how they can become the best version of themselves. I think there's so much comparison today to everyone around you, but to really look at your why and who you want to be, and now just every day get a little bit better at being the best you. And when you can get a pattern like that working, now your self-confidence grows, your results are better, and then you become one who can go out and accomplish great things.
Yeah, I think somebody said very wise one time, something along the lines of like, well, if you tell somebody what to do, good luck getting them to do it. But if you can, show them why it's important to them to do it and inspire them to want to then do it, that's when you get people to take action. Yeah. How did you get young people to open up when they're struggling, or maybe they've done something against the mission rules, for example? And how do you get, what process or what did you do to get people to be vulnerable with you and to open up? I think there's so much power in being able to hold that space for somebody when they decide to, as a missionary, I know, like one time on my mission, it was the worst thing I did on my mission, but it was Game 7 of the World Series, Roger Clemens versus Kurt Schilling, and I was a baseball kid, and I watched the game. And I remember I was so nervous to tell my president because I didn't want to let him down, and I knew I shouldn't have done it. And I remember when I told him, and I got myself the courage to do it. But I'll never forget what he said to me, because he made me feel so important and he made me feel so seen. And he could have been mad at me. He could have yelled at me. He could have told me, you know better. And instead he laughed and he said, "Oh, Elder Rex, if I could have 200 just like you." And I'll never forget that, because I was just like, oh my gosh, he knows how hard I'm working. He sees me. He knows how much this means to me, And I made a decision I needed to watch that game, And at the end of the day, from that day forward, I was like, I will never let him down again. And I didn't. Right. But it was the way he responded to me in that moment. And so I'd love to hear any insights you have as a coach and a mentor and somebody that, has a lot of guys come to them and be like, hey man, this is this thing I did and I'm not proud of it. And I think it's so important to be able to hold that space and learn from people like yourself who did it for so many times, I'm sure.
Well, I think the story you just gave, your own personal story, I think is a perfect example of that. When you say your mission president, the way he made you feel caused you to want to do things different, caused you to want to be better. And so I think we talked about that earlier, about high expectations and high love. you got to be careful with that, because you come with too much love, now
they don't change their behavior.
Yeah, and if you come with too much expectation, you think of your experience with that you had with your two mission presidents, and so it is that balance. But I think none of us are perfect, and this was a great lesson for me to learn, because I was one who definitely leaned more on the high expectation side. I because I'm that way with myself. I'm very driven, very focused, hardworking, and I found myself expecting everybody around me to be like that. And so when they weren't, they knew it, and they knew that let me down. And when I was like that, now they felt bad, and there was a time in my career, in my life, the way that I was, that I felt that's how I motivated them, how I impacted them. Okay, you feel bad, now let's do something about it, And so then, like you described with your mission president, I learned that no, that by itself won't get us there. They have to know, like you described, that they're being heard, that they're being seen, that they're okay despite a mistake. And when they feel that heard, seen, and accepted, at the end of the day, they feel loved and recognized. And when you feel that way, like you felt, that they want to change now. You didn't go away and try to be better because of something he said, but like you said, the way he made you feel, that motivated you to want to do something different. So I think as leaders, we have to realize that, we hear so much today about emotional intelligence. We have to realize as we're sitting down, whether it's with our child that's making some bad choices, whether it's with a missionary, whether it's a team member in the store, we got to sit down and listen. I mean, really listen to what's being said. And the biggest part of that conversation is, I want to make sure wherever this goes that they do feel like you described. They feel acknowledged. They feel accepted. They feel heard. They feel you made them feel better about themselves for having had that exchange. And then with that, you can layer into there some expectations and some belief. And hey, if you do some things this way, you're going to find that that's going to have a greater impact on the ultimate results that you want to get. Make it about them, and make it about how it's going to touch improve their life. And I'll tell you, for me, being one who was so driven to learn that, my impact today is so different compared to how it was in those early days. Michael McHenry can tell you how it was in those early days versus how it is today. I'd have to look at myself, and that what is the biggest change is that I don't judge them. I see them for who they are and the great people. I mean, the potential. I see them for who they can become, and that's what I focus on. And so I build upon the good. We always talk about a 3-to-1. I try to, in that conversation, make sure there's 3 things I highlighted that they're doing really well. And then, there's one thing maybe we're going to talk about how we can follow up and see if they can work on.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It reminds me of that saying, like, nobody cares what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah.
I think for me, the way that I say this is, my only job as the leader of this group is to create an environment that feels safe enough for these guys to be inspired to want to change themselves. And that's my job as the leader, is to create that environment, to create that safety, to create that situation where they do feel comfortable and they want to be better because they feel inspired. And it's like, it's not something I say. There's nothing I can tell you. I can't want success for you more than you're going to want it for yourself. But if I can help you to be inspired, maybe through other guys' stories, or maybe my story, or maybe just something with your own story, then I think that's where somebody goes. Because I try to think of my own life. When did I decide that I was going to live this way? When did I decide that I was going to push harder than anyone else I've ever met, right? When did I decide that I was just going to be the best at what I did, when I was in real estate and other things? And it's like, oh, that person inspired me. Well, what did they say? Like, what was that experience? And it was like, oh, I remember wanting to just have a great life. I remember hearing that person and going, that was what I wanted. That's how I want to end my life. When I get to the end, I want to look back and go, that's what I did, And I've tried to recreate those moments for other people. And I think that's what's caused us to have the success that we had, why we're growing the way we are, is because we just create environments for you to be inspired to change yourself. Yeah. And nobody should be like me. I'm not telling you this is what you do to have a good life. It's, hey, here's some ideas. Now, what do you need to do to make your life what you want it to be? And I think when people feel that, like you said that so well, I think that's where change happens.
Well, and I think as you described that, what you're doing is you're you're being intentional, you're being on purpose. And I think to live a life, an on-purpose life, to be an on-purpose person, to be intentional, even in going into a hard conversation, when you're intentional in that and you're on purpose with it, you kind of know the outcome that you're working toward, which is bringing that high love and introducing some certainly levels of expectation. But when you're on purpose that way, now you don't get lost in the trap that we all fall in of what's important to me, what you're trying to, that whole concept we hear about, you seek to understand before being understood. When you're on purpose and you go into that conversation, it's a whole different conversation when you're intentional and you're on purpose.
Well, last question I want to ask you is, if somebody was, how old were you when you did the first franchise?
How old was I when I did my first franchise? So I had already built and sold a few companies. So I would say the first Costa franchise, I would have been probably in my early 30s.
Okay. And it's actually interesting to even hear you say it that way, because I think too often we want to just have the success too early, right? You had already had a very successful business career by the time this opportunity presented itself. But if you're a young person, let's say you're in college, I'm sure you talk to a lot of people that age still, mentor a lot of people. What advice do you have for somebody in the world we live in today? What advice do you have for the kid or the guy or the woman that's, in her young 20s and trying to figure out what direction to go with building a successful business or life?
Let me answer that this way, and I'll be quick on this, but this is it's important to understand this. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control every time your reaction to it. So you can't control the events of your life. My life, and I'll go to my mom because that's where it all started. My mom was my mom was born to a mom and dad who had an affair, and they were both married. My grandfather had 4 children. My grandmother was a newlywed. They met in a bar, and my mom was a result of that meeting. And my grandfather moved my grandmother and my mother right across the street from his wife and 4 children and told them to deal with it. And my mom grew up with this environment of rejection. Both my grandfather and my grandmother were alcoholics. She dealt with a lot of dysfunction, was sent off to live with family members, brought back, and through all that dysfunction, I think she was like 15 years old, she ran away, never to return home. And when she ran away, she joined a magazine selling crew on the street, and that's where she met my dad, my biological dad. He was a first-generation immigrant from Ireland. He was an alcoholic, and he was on the streets and joined this magazine selling crew, and they had a massive amount of dysfunction. They ended up having 3 pregnancies. Her first pregnancy, I think she was 15, 16, and that was a miscarriage. Then she had a second pregnancy with my older sister, and then a pregnancy with me. And so she had 3 pregnancies before she was 19. And my dad, my biological dad, was shot and killed.
Wow. And
my mom married a military man. My stepdad, they were married for 22 years. Wonderful individual. As I look back on it, at the time, there was a lot of dysfunction between him and my mom's relationship. And being raised in that environment, there was things that I don't have time to mention that just were crazy, full of dysfunction. And I remember that as I would look around and I would see, and it started with, it really stood out when sister missionaries knocked on our door and for the first time introduced into our home a feeling, a spirit that we had never had in our home. And it was so real that I was 14, 15 at the time, and it just I just couldn't wait for them to come over and to share their messages. And anyway, our family joined the church. Eventually, my mom and my stepdad got divorced, and my mom and my sisters distanced themselves from the church. But for me, it changed the trajectory of my life. I would look around at my friends, and I would see their parents and the relationship that their parents had with each other or with the kids, and I thought, I want that. And in order to have that, I have to become better than I am. This dysfunction that I've been a part of and that's all I know, I just got to be on purpose, and I just got to start getting a little bit better. And I remember just being around these friends or being around, that's where I started to become a voracious reader, just success principles, just going to work little by little, just changing. I couldn't control what happened to my mom. I couldn't control what I was raised, the environment that was there, but I could control my reaction to it. So I took all the good, because there was a lot of good there, took a lot of the good that was there, and then I just really started focusing on being on purpose, what I wanted my life to look like. And so I would answer it that way. Just you can't control your circumstances all the time, but you can always control your reactions. So whatever it is, whatever environment, some are born into, my business partner, Dave, born into my wife, born into an amazing family. Okay, well, you've got your circumstances, but whatever they are, you now control your reaction. How are you going to build upon that? And I think if we can understand that whatever the circumstances are, we can shape and create whatever we truly can, whatever we want to make happen. But it's going to take work, and you got to be willing to do it.
What a beautiful story. My grandma had her 100th birthday a couple of years ago. She's actually 102 now. She's about to become 103. She's just refusing to die. I love it. But I asked her for one piece of advice when she turned 100, and she said, control the things you can control, and quit trying to control the things that you can't, but really focus on the things you can control. And that's beautiful advice. And I love, Viktor Frankl. I'm sure you're very familiar with his work, but that's the whole principle of his entire book, Man's Search for Meaning, is we control that moment between stimulus and response. And in that response is our destiny. It's everything.
That's exactly right.
Well, thank you so much. I could talk to you all day. I really appreciate the time, and thanks for making such good food. It's served me hundreds, literally maybe thousands of times. And so I really appreciate everything you've done to build such a beautiful brand and company, and everything you do for the community.
Well, if I can just sincerely say thank you for your work and touching the lives of all those 150 in your community. The world's a better place for your work. And so thank you for being willing to make that part of who you are.
Thank you.